Good afternoon. That's good. Woo! Yes. So thank you for coming here. We are here for the cross-border track, and we have 5 fabulous speakers lined up here. I let them do most of the talking and sharing in terms of what are the disruptions and what are the developments happening in the cross-border space. But as chair, I have obligations and duties to introduce and kind of set the tone for this track, so I'll try and do that. This is a little bit about me, and this is about the track. Basically, we are talking about 5 themes here. Unlocking borderless payments out of China, international banking without the bank. Both of these are interesting themes and close to my heart. Succeeding in a misunderstood market, and I had the joy and the fortune of having interacted and seen Lucy yesterday night at another party where she presented on a similar theme. She's going to talk about it today. Connecting the global digital community, pioneer, and a new age of cashless tourism. So I think 5 very relevant and important themes. We're going to try and cover these. This is a little bit about the logistics. So in case anybody wants Wi-Fi, here is the access. I'll take a 10-second pause. You can note it down. Okay, so I normally start my chairing with a couple of slides as snippets so that it sets the tone and the mood for the rest of the track. But 2 key messages for now. I'll keep it brief and let the speakers do the rest of the talking and presentation. The first is, clearly all of us are here because we agree that cross-border transactions are a huge opportunity. They are a growing opportunity. And somehow, there are still significant inefficiencies. So let me share some numbers. I'm sure these are not rocket science statistics for you, but just to kind of put things in context. There was a report recently published which said that cross-border B2C e-commerce is likely to double from $500 billion to $1 trillion by 2020 in just 3 years' time. So that's the scale. And mind you, this is going to be powered by Asia. So this, again, is not a phenomenon which is limited to the US or probably EU. A large part of this growth is going to come from Asia. A lot of us who've been in the payment space for long know some numbers about cross-border remittances. And I actually could not include that slide, but it's above $600 billion. And again, the major recipient markets are all in Asia. So China, India, Philippines, Indonesia, et cetera, if you take out Mexico and a couple of others. And last year, Chinese tourists alone spent close to $150 billion outside of China. So that's the scale and the scope of cross-border tourism that we're talking about. And we have a fabulous speaker from Alipay later today who will probably take us through that. So we all agree it's a huge opportunity, but it's pretty inefficient. And very quickly, what do I mean by that? So I spent most of my life and my career as a banker, so I've been on the other side of the inefficiency. I've been one of those engines of inefficiency, if I were to say so. Even today, if you want to remit money from country A to country B, as I do pretty regularly, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do, it takes at least a couple of days, in cases 4 to 5 days. So it's slow. It's expensive, and I don't need to articulate that anymore. Depending on the amount you're remitting, it could cost from 2 to 3% for microtransactions, even 8 to 10%. And it's complex and it's non-transparent, right? So you don't know between your bank and the receiving bank how it kind of works. So that's how many legs are there in between. And therefore, we are talking about disruptive solutions which are paving the way forward, and we have 5 of them who will talk about this today. But I put them in 3 neat buckets. The first is the global model. The Chinese giants are introducing us to a new MNC model, which is global meets local, and I call it glocal. The second is fintechs and blockchain. They're making transactions cheaper, faster, and solving for the friction in the whole transaction. And the third is about ambient banking. I'm sure by now in this session, we've heard enough about this. So this is just a flavor of how the Chinese giants are working over there. When I speak about the global model, this is the footprint of Ant Financial, and that's the footprint of Tencent, and they are pretty much the MNCs of the fintech era. So this is how some of the innovative payment solutions are trying to solve for the friction through blockchain. So you see some examples. There are many others. So there's coins.ph, and there's Visa has come up with this as well. And I spoke about ambient banking. Our speakers will talk through it in detail, but this is where I'll end. So the message here is banking is moving from more to the core. So banks are becoming the core, and the more is through this suite of services that we talk about. And I've put some visuals here. This is indicative, but the clue here is really spot the bank in this whole series of transactions. So this could as well be the story of any of the millennials. They get their student loan from SoFi. They do funds transfer through Venmo. They remit through TransferWise. And they invest through Acorn. So where do you spot the bank in this whole life of the emerging customers? So with that, I hope I have set the tone for the remaining presentations. Don't mind my taking out my cell. That's where all the speaker details are there. So it's my pleasure to call on stage our first speaker, Raymond Qu, who's the CEO of Geoswift. He's going to talk about borderless payments into and out of China. We discussed it, but let's hear it from Raymond. Please put your hands together for him.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's an amazing stage. Look at so many stars here. Okay. Money20 asked me to prepare a PowerPoint for today's speech. Actually, I'm not the person who used to use the PowerPoint, because someone told me people use the PowerPoint, actually no power and no points. So if I'll do my best to follow my slides, but if I'm missing something, don't be surprised. First of all, China is a very interesting country. It is the second biggest economic country as of today. However, its currency is still highly regulated. So a lot of international players, they have big challenges in moving money in and out of China. So we need to understand why it happened. Because China is such a dynamic country, and its monetary policies is always changing. So let's review what happened in the China monetary policies. In the past 40 years, the China monetary policies is always easy in, difficult out. They encouraged foreign investment. They encouraged export business. And as a result, the China government have the big foreign reserve, which is roughly 3.84 trillion end of 2014. So there's a joke in the market saying Americans owe money to Chinese. So in Wall Street, we all know there's a joke saying, if I owe you $100, that's my problem. But if I owe you $1 million, that's your problem. So it happened here. So if you think in a China point of view, the Americans owe a big amount of money to Chinese. So China government have a big risk. So therefore, the China start to change. There are three major changes you can see. The first is they reduce the percentage of US dollars in the basket currencies, which means it's not just the Americans owe money to Chinese, but also Europeans, Japanese, and in many other countries. The second change is they convert cash into asset. It's just like a family. If you have too much cash, what do we do? So we'll start to buy something. So that's why you can see the Chinese companies that start to buy a lot of things in the world. The filming companies, soccer club, and oil, and manufacturers, a lot of things. But the most important changes is they try to convert RMB to be free currencies. So they create a new term, CNH, back to 2012, 2013. So that's a free currency. And CNY is a restricted currencies. For CNH, the policy is easy out, difficult in. Because they try to encourage more people to use that currencies. However, they don't want that money back to China easily. That will cause inflation in China, right? So if you remember, the old policies is the easy in, difficult out, and the new policy is the easy out, difficult in. That's opposite. So that caused a lot of confusion in the market. And even in China, you can see the different regulators that have the different understanding of the policies. A lot of our friends that went to China for answers, unfortunately, when they come back, they're more confused, right? So for anything we try to do, we have to understand the background of the money flow and understand how and why the China policies changes. So back to 2014, the central bank have internal meetings, and I was invited to attend that meeting. So during the meeting, it's very clear. First of all, they say, in their term, they say, the current account will be fully opened. What's the meaning of current account? That meaning the transactions was endorsed by some transactions. For example, travel, education, e-commerce, services. So that's meaning the current account. The second is the capital account will be opened under some conditions. So capital account is for investment, insurance, and just many other investment activities. And the third is in the certain regions fully opened. So that's free trading zone. So back to the e-commerce. So as I said, e-commerce is part of the current account. So suppose it's fully opened. So if you look into the e-commerce, a lot of people think the Chinese e-commerce market is growing so fast. But if you look at numbers, back to 2011, only 4% the online shoppers account of a total amount of the Chinese trading amount. Still a lot of growing opportunities of e-commerce business in China. And back to 2016, that grows to 20%. So that's a huge growth. But still another 80%, there's a lot of room to grow. And also, if we look into the e-commerce, we need to realize the domestic e-commerce are very different from the cross-border e-commerce. The reason is, just like you go to the local cities for restaurants, so you know which one is good. That's why in the domestic market, so online shoppers, they always prefer to buy from the independent running branded e-commerce instead of going to the marketplace. However, in the cross-border e-commerce, they prefer to use some brand they are familiar with, just like Amazon or eBay. It's just like you travel in a strange country, you don't know what to eat, so you will prefer to eat at McDonald's or KFC, some brand you know. Therefore, from consumer side, because the domestic and the international cross-border e-commerce are very different, so in the payment side, that's also very different. And also, we need to talk about another topic about the payment business is how to work with the regulators. The regulation is always the big challenges of the whole industry. So we need to remember it's always the fintech come first and the regulations after, right? So in another speech, I'll make a joke about the terms. So we all know the banking industry were facing the big challenges from the new technology. And there's a common term, say, non-banking financial institution. So that's some companies like us, right? But I would say in the future, it may have a new term, no banking financial institution. Why? If you look into China, right? So Alipay or Tenpay, WeChat Pay, there are so many e-wallet players. They are doing so well, and they have their own e-wallet system. And that e-wallet system actually can independently running without a bank. So the banking industry also changed a lot. They try to leverage the new technology about this new demand from the market. So I would say that keep in mind, in old days, we all say the competition analysis is very important. So you need to know who is your competitor and how to compete on the pricing or those stuff. But now, I think that didn't make sense at all. The important things is not trying to kill someone in the market. The most important is to create the value for your client. Because when the two competitors, they are fighting each other and they try to kill other people, but you will see, you never know some crazy young people sitting somewhere and with the crazy idea and kill everyone in the table without no reasons. So that's very important to keep your the advantage over the new technology and create the value for your client. I think that's all for my today's speech. And again, if I don't follow my PowerPoint, because I'm not used to use the PowerPoint, but I hope my points can help for you to understand China. That's it. Thank you.